calendar, so I think we can kick things off a bit. I do just want to remind everyone that we are recording today's session to give everyone who didn't get a chance to attend live the opportunity to hear and view, the topics and discussions we get to have today. The breakout sessions that we'll be doing will not be recorded, so don't worry about that. You should feel free to share as much as you like during those sessions. But the planned scripted segments will be okay. Alrighty then. Well, welcome. Hi everyone. Welcome to the My Million Year monthly speaker series. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Bryant, co-founder and coach at My Million Year. For some background, I've been working in management consulting for over 10 years, focused on financial services clients. I did my undergrad at NYU and MBA at Columbia Business School. I'm also a CPA and passed the CFA exams. I'm joined by my fellow co-founder and friend for over 13 years, Ed. He's had a number of job roles across Deloitte, American Express, Time, and currently at Facebook. And we are so excited that you're all joining us for our first event of 2021. So our intention is that every month we'll be bringing you messages of inspiration and fresh perspectives from across the My Million Year community. For today's session, we'll be sharing a member spotlight, a financial tip of the month, and we'll go into a 10-minute community building session where you'll meet other members of the community in smaller groups. Lastly, we'll have a one-on-one discussion with our guest speaker, John Sanchez. He's a lifelong Bronx native, NYU alum, and candidate for New York City Council in the 15th District in the Bronx. So I want to acknowledge in the month of January, we celebrate the birthday and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's a man whose beautiful dream was a call to action for all Americans to fight for equal rights and opportunities for all diverse peoples in this country. So I strongly encourage you all to take time after this to watch or listen to Dr. King's speech to find strength and get inspired. We'll put a link in the chat where you can listen to his speech in its entirety. And we'll put that in a little bit. So we believe at My Million Year that every dream is worth pursuing if it has a positive impact on your life and the lives of people around you. And at My Million Year, we want to provide you with guidance, mentorship, and a community of support to make your dreams a reality through events like this one, as well as one-on-one coaching. So to roll things along, I want to have for this month's member spotlight, I want to recognize community member Javine Gordon for making major career moves and transitioning to a new job at Deloitte in the audit and assurance practice. So Javim, can you join us on screen? Say hello.
Hi guys, I'm Javim. Nice to meet you guys. I'm elated to share my story with you guys.
Awesome. So for a quick introduction, Javim is from Connecticut. He graduated from South Connecticut State University, and he was previously working at Webster Bank for 2 years as an internal controls accountant. In addition to working full-time, he's been working towards a master's in accounting with a concentration in AI and analytics. And I had the opportunity to get to know Javim when we first spoke last year about his career goals. We were in full pandemic lockdown mode already, but that didn't stop Javim from dreaming about making a move and seeking new opportunities to grow professionally and move forward in life. So, Javim, I just want to take a few minutes to chat. What was your main motivation for making a career change, for going from Webster Bank to Deloitte?
Yeah, so at the time, as you said, it was full pandemic. And what really motivated me was two things. I really wanted mentorship and I really wanted opportunity. And because of the size of the bank, it wasn't the biggest bank in the world. It was a mid-sized bank. There was limited opportunities for me there. So I felt like it was the right time and right time to do it.
Awesome. No time like the present.
Right.
When you decided that you wanted to make the move, what actions did you take and how did you prepare to make that move?
Yeah, so Thank you again for the spotlight, Brian, this one. So when I spoke to you and you really, because you have experience working with the Big Four, you gave me a lot of guidance on what I could do to really prep myself to fit the job that I was going for. And that really helped me out to recreate my resume and think about what I really want to do and decide and make a decision on what I really want to do. What kind of jobs am I going to apply for specifically, and what my future goals are, and how they correlate as well. So yeah, so that was the main things. I'm really knowing what I wanted, and I'm creating that resume and actually executing.
That's great. I mean, I'm glad you found our conversation helpful back then. I mean, but that's all you making it happen, making it real. You know, that's a major accomplishment. I mean, it's tough
Thank
out
you.
here right now, and you were able to make a move and get successful. So hopefully you're enjoying the new role. What do you see for yourself in the year ahead in 2020?
Right. So right now it's in the middle of busy season, so it's as the namesake, I could really only see the next day right now. I'm just focused on the task at hand. But for my ambitions for the remainder of the year is I really want to go to pass all the sections of the CPA exam and to accomplish that by year end.
Awesome. Awesome. Another big goal. Well, congratulations, Javim. We're so proud of you. Keep us posted on any other big developments. All right.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
All right. Awesome. Well, now, in addition to grit, elbow grease, and hard work, sometimes your dreams need capital, financial resources, funding to make them real. So every month, our very own Ed, personal finance whiz, will be bringing a financial tip to help you save money or make money in your everyday life. So I'll pass things over to Ed. What's our millionaire finance tip of the month?
Cool. So for our first one of the year, I wanted to start off with something pretty easy that I think everyone should do because it doesn't cost you anything. And that is a company called Rakuten. A lot of you may have already heard of Rakuten. But let me just share my screen now and walk you through what it is. So Rakuten partners with a bunch of retailers, and what they do is they give you deals with all kinds of retailers. You can see a bunch of them on the side. Pretty much anything you can think of, there's a chance they have a deal with them. And the way it works is you install Rakuten either on your browser or you use the app, and then as you're just browsing the internet, if you're buying something and you go to a retail store, it'll just kind of indicate to you that they have a deal with Rakuten. And it's could range anything from 1% cash back to 20% cash back. Depends on what it is. So here's an example of what I did in a couple of years ago, 2019. I thought this was a good example because I bought something. I typically don't shop at Bloomingdale's, but I was buying a Hypervolt, which is a massage gun. Here it is right here. I highly recommend this. And it's something that I knew I was going to buy. And then I just searched around online on where I could get one of these. And I saw that Bloomingdale's had a deal with Rakuten that was 15% cash back. So instead of buying it on Amazon or directly from Hypervolt, I bought it through Bloomingdale's to get 15% cash back. And what's great about Rakuten is that it stacks on top of your credit card cashback bonuses. So we'll have plenty of other financial tips in the future about credit cards, but I just wanted to show an example of this specific transaction. So the Hypervolt for me cost $269. I got 15% cash back on Rakuten on the list price. And then because I used my Citi Double Cash, I still got the 2% cash back on the same $269. So for a total savings of $45.75. So didn't cost me anything. It's just a little bit of upfront work of installing the app, and then when you're shopping, just checking out the different options of where to buy. So we'll send this out afterwards. We have a referral link here. So when you spend $20, you get $20 back on your first purchase. The key to this, whenever I share this with friends, is don't increase your spending. Like, don't go to Rakuten to see all the different deals and then start buying a bunch of stuff because you think it's 15% cash back and you're making money. Only buy things that you're going to buy anyway, and that's how you really make this work for you. So keep your spending the same. Install the app, have it around in the background, and then when you decide to buy something, it'll tell you when there's a deal. So that's the first tip of the month.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those tips, Ed. I love using Rakuten as well. Whenever I'm doing shopping, I check to see if there's a deal going on. I just moved into a new apartment, so I've been buying shopping furniture lately. I've seen West Elm pop up on there. So yeah, definitely a great way to save. Awesome, love the tip. All right, so we're going to move right along into our community building session. As mentioned, we're going to divide up the group here into breakout rooms of 3 to 4 people each to give you a chance to meet someone new, get to know each other better. So in your breakout rooms, introduce yourselves. State your name, your school, current job, and the question of the day is, what was your dream when you were 10 years old? And how has that changed now that you've grown up and you're a little bit older? All right, so keep that in mind. So we're about to go into the breakout rooms. Ed, can you take it away?
So I'll automatically assign people at random, and we'll be in the breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. See you in 10.
See you in 10.
All right, welcome back, everybody. People are trickling back in now.
All right, looks like we are back. Hope everyone enjoyed the breakout sessions. Hope you enjoyed getting to meet some other members of the community. Got to share some stories and experiences. I know enjoyed my breakout group. I'm definitely curious to hear what you guys talked about and what you thought what you remembered your dream being when you're 10 years old or a kid. So feel free to post and share what your dream was in the chat, and we'll pick some of the favorites from this meeting, and we'll share them next month at the next meeting. So please do feel free to share your dreams. I'd love to hear about that. All right. Well, we're heading into our last segment of the day, which is the one-on-one with John Sanchez as our guest speaker for the month. So a quick introduction on John. John is a lifelong Bronx resident. He's currently the district manager for Bronx Community Board 6. He is a candidate for New York City Council in the 15th District in the Bronx, which includes neighborhoods of Belmont, East Tremont, and West Farms. I had the honor of meeting John when we were students at NYU together. So we go way back, and honestly, it's incredible to see how how we've changed since college and the types of, goals and dreams we have, and seeing those come to life is really, really inspiring. So I'm very, very, fortunate to invite John to join us for this month's meeting and talk about, his dream and his vision for New York City. So John, feel free to join us and give a quick intro on yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ed, for inviting me. It's been a long time since college, but it's good to be here and speak to folks about the city and just local government, giving a different perspective. So I'm John Sanchez. I'm running for City Council in the 15th District. It's a neighborhood that I grew up in, and I'm running for a very simple reason. I want to make my neighborhood one where people can thrive, raise their family, and remain in the neighborhood rather than feel like they need to leave the neighborhood to make it. Not too many people from my neighborhood are able to go into a school like NYU and do well for themselves, work in consulting, then come back and serve their neighborhood. I don't want my story to be uncommon. I want my story to be common. I want people to have those same opportunities. So that's why I'm specifically running. The neighborhood that I'm running in has a lot of challenges. Pre-pandemic, we had about 17% unemployment. Now we're in the mid-30s when it comes to unemployment. We have, higher crime rates. Average person in the neighborhood makes about $25,000 a year. And it's important when we're thinking about 2021, we're electing a new mayor, we're electing 35 new council members. What do we want to see the next 10 years of New York City look like? Do we want it to be a city where people can rise up from humble beginnings and be able to do well for themselves or their families? Or do we want to have a city where you have rich pockets and you have poor pockets and nothing in between? So I'm looking forward to the conversation and looking forward to your questions.
Thanks for that intro, John. I want to start off by exploring your career trajectory a little bit, because I found it interesting when we spoke earlier this month. So you graduated from NYU, and you first ended up in management consulting at Booz Allen Hamilton in DC. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, I always wanted to get into government, but I thought, why not do a government consulting firm? I moved to DC to work at Booz Allen, and it just wasn't a good fit. So I left after a year, and I came back to the Bronx, and I took a very circuitous route. I've always been into fitness and working out, and I probably spent more time at the gym than the college library. So I wanted to be a personal trainer, and I went for it. And I was a personal trainer in the Bronx, helping people improve their health, be in shape. And the Bronx is ranked number 62 out of 62 counties when it comes to health outcomes. So that was important to me because I was helping people in my neighborhood be better, have longer lives, and feel better about themselves. After that, I decided I wanted to get involved in government. And, I have my degree at the time. I reached out to a campaign and said, I want to volunteer. And the person was Michael Blake, his assembly member. He won the campaign. And 3-4 months later, I was his deputy chief of staff, managing the district office. And I never even had a single interview. And what I tell people is that politics is one of the few careers where if you work hard and you do well, you can rise very quickly. So after that, I worked there for a year. I wasn't getting paid very much. I was getting paid $25,000 a year, working around the clock, managing a district office of 100,000 people, helping people with concerns, whether it's preventing evictions, to helping them get benefits, to making sure they have heat and hot water in their house. Then it was a great experience. That was my graduate school into government. After that, I worked for an advocacy group that wanted to help charter schools get extra money for being in private space. Did that for 6 months. But then I joined the community board, and that's where I've been the past 4 years. And I've been a district manager there. Simplest way to think about my job, it's like being a council member, except we don't pass legislation and we don't get millions of dollars to invest in our community. And I'm most proud of the community board because we've done things that were innovative. We were the only community board in the city to have a year-round paid internship program. so other people interested in government can have opportunities to learn about government. We sponsored open gyms for young people so they can have basketball and volleyball free of charge in the summer. We sponsored financial literacy workshops, art classes for the community. So we've done a lot, and that experience led me to run for office because I wanted to have a bigger impact in my neighborhood. So that's my path. And my first job ever, I didn't have my first job ever until the summer after my freshman year of college. And I was a real estate agent. So that was my first job ever, showing apartments downtown in the East and West Village. So what I tell people is that try things that you're interested in. It makes your experience better and more well-rounded.
There's so much to unpack right there, John. So I'm gonna dive into it piece by piece because I love the diversity of experiences. I think first off, for those of us in the community who are not as familiar with local government and local politics, could you break down how the New York City government structure, the different roles and positions, where does the mayor fit in, where does the city council fit in, and the responsibilities of each?
Yeah, the mayor is the executive of the city. He is the one that crafts the $90 billion plus budget. He appoints the agency heads, so the police commissioner, the parks commissioner, all of that. The city council, there's 51 council members, they vote on the budget, they introduce legislation. The big power that the city council has is over land use. And land use, those are the rules that govern what can or can't be built on a specific piece of land. So let's say there's a new construction going on across your building. If the building's too tall or it's too short, that's governed by what the zoning allows. The other thing that the city council can do is we get something called discretionary and capital funds. And that's money that we can invest in our community, whether it goes to nonprofits, parks, security, things of that nature. So that's pretty much how the breakdown works. But the mayor really controls a lot in the city. And the city council is kind of like Congress with the legislative branch. And just to give a little bit more context on just New York State, a lot of people may not like the mayor, but certain things just aren't in his control. For example, the mayor is not in charge of the MTA. That is the governor. So if the trains are not running on time, that's not the mayor's fault. It's the governor. The ability to raise taxes. If you say my taxes are too high, the mayor has nothing to do with that. The state has the power over raising taxes. Even something like tolls on bridges, that's all the state. Even something like schools, school openings, school closures, restaurant openings, restaurant closures, that's all the governor and the state. And what you find when you run for city office is that there's so much that we want to change, but we have to ask for permission from the state to do that. Even something as simple as putting a speed camera in front of a school, we need to ask the state for permission to do that.
Got it. That's really enlightening. And I think several of those points are major sticking points where it's very easy to say, oh, de Blasio, what are you doing? It's important to know where that authority, where that accountability, truly does lie. With the council, and talking about land use and those responsibilities, what do you think you'd like the council to accomplish, with the next, kind of administration after this election? What do you think should be the path forward from 2021 onward?
Well, I think everyone recognizes that we have 57,000 New Yorkers in the shelter system. We have a housing crisis and we have a housing shortage. People think New York City is the city of skyscrapers. There must be enough housing for people. But we don't have enough housing. We had 20% job growth before the pandemic. We only had 8% housing growth. And right now, the land use and zoning rules are really skewed and out of date. For example, there are parts of Staten Island and Riverdale that only allow single-family homes to be built. So affordable housing can't be built there because of the outdated zoning. We have manufacturing zones where manufacturing doesn't take place. we can change those rules to allow housing. And I think the biggest thing that the city council needs to do is, I understand, we all understand we're in a fiscal crisis. We don't have as much money as we normally do. The way it traditionally works is wealthy neighborhoods resist affordable housing, and they put all of the affordable housing or low income housing in poor neighborhoods. I propose that we put affordable housing in wealthy neighborhoods, one, to combat segregation in the city, but two, because we have limited dollars, let's use the subsidy dollars that we do use in poorer neighborhoods so we can have more affordable housing built there. If you're in a wealthy neighborhood, you don't need to subsidize affordable housing because the market's so strong. The market rentals can subsidize the lower cost rentals. So that'd be the biggest thing. We need to upzone, we need to build more. And then for people that are still struggling, we need to really expand vouchers, because for some people, believe it or not, $500 a month in rent will always be too much for them. So what are we doing to help those people at the bottom band of the income distribution in the city?
Got it. John, why is it important that we integrate, these wealthier neighborhoods and these lower income neighborhoods? Why is it important that we integrate?
Yeah, I wrote an op-ed about this. My campaign actually started with an op-ed. So right now there's a proposal to rezone Soho, which is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. It's a neighborhood that is one of the healthiest in the city. It's a neighborhood that has ample park space. It's an area that has great subway transportation. And right now, a lot of the wealthy homeowners there are pushing back, saying that affordable housing will destroy their neighborhood character or threaten their quality of life. And my argument was, if you allow an essential worker to deliver your food or serve as your nanny or shop in your neighborhood, what right do we have to deny them the ability to live in a rich neighborhood if they're providing all of these essential services? Everyone in this city deserves the right to have a roof over their head, whether it's in a wealthy neighborhood or a poor neighborhood. And that was my approach. We can't have neighborhoods that are gated communities. New York City is a city that's open to everyone around the world. Ellis Island, a city where people come from other states and cities to come for the opportunity. We can't limit that opportunity just because people may feel uncomfortable with living with people that look differently from them. It's important for a whole host of reasons, but I think it's just a basic fairness issue. If someone comes to this city, there should be enough housing supply so they could live here and take a chance. Right now, we have a situation where you can only live south of 96th Street if you have a bunch of roommates or if you're wealthy. And it shouldn't be that way.
I completely agree with that, John. I think most, if not all of us, on this call, have come to this country, have come to, America, as immigrants, and the fact that America is founded on principles of being free and open for all is an important part of what makes us special and what makes this country strong. And when we separate people in different ways, when we divide people in the wrong ways, then we create these bubbles where now people living in different bubbles no longer understand each other or can communicate or can really unite and see that they have shared values, that they are people deserving of chances and opportunities. So I definitely, that message definitely resonates strongly with me. And I think that's something we need to continue to fight for, to tear down walls, tear down barriers, and create bridges and opportunities for everyone, because we really can't succeed if there are we can't succeed as a country if there's so many of us who are struggling. So I think that's a really important point, and I like your points about integrating, removing those barriers.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it. We're going through a pandemic. pandemics don't recognize district boundaries or borough boundaries. So what happens in one part of the city impacts another. We're an interconnected city,
Yes,
and we need to work together.
exactly, exactly. I want to touch on some other parts, of your career and some of the other accomplishments that you've had. When we spoke before, you've talked about your work with a charter school advocacy group.
Yes.
Talk about your stances on education and those opportunities.
So I'll just give a quick background on me. My birthday is May 17th, which is the same day where Brown versus Board of Education was decided by the Supreme Court, which called for the schools to be integrated to end segregation. I'm a product of Catholic schools. I went to school in the early 90s where the school system was lower performing than it is now. My parents were able to afford to send me to Catholic school, Catholic high school, then I was able to go to NYU. Without those opportunities, I don't know if I'd be where I am right now. And charter schools weren't an option back then. They're an option now. So the way I view education is we need to provide options and choices for families the same way that wealthy people in this world have options for education. So I support good schools, whether it's a district school or a charter school. But I think a push to limit or prevent charter schools or options is a disservice to parents and children. In New York City, charter schools outperform the district schools. That's not a knock against the district schools, but it's just a fact. So I think we should be expanding charter schools. I'm on the board of a charter school in the Bronx, 2 blocks away from where my mom grew up in public housing. And when you see what the schools are doing, students are graduating from high school at 99% rates, where the average is 65%, where the students are going on to college, being that first generation to go to college. I don't know how you can't be supportive of schools that are providing that opportunity. So that's my view on education. Like I mentioned, a lot of education policy is determined by the state. There's only so much the city can do.
Right. How do you respond to those who are of the position that, if there weren't, all this funding for charter schools, wouldn't that be more funding for, the existing, standard public schools?
Well, it's important to know in New York City, charter schools are public schools. They're chartered or given a license by the state. The state licensed them and charters them. So if a charter school isn't performing well, the state can shut it down. The other thing, being on the board of a charter school, we get less money per student than a traditional public school. And unlike a lot of the narratives, we raised about $50,000 for the year in additional fundraising, not a lot of money. And we get $8,000 less than a traditional district school. So it's not really about a money issue. It's really about how is the money being spent? Is it being spent in the right ways? When the pandemic really struck, we had it in our budget to give every student a tablet, a Google Chromebook. So we were able to do remote learning off the bat, even though we received less money. So I really think it's about the budget allocation versus the just sheer amount of money. I mean, New York State and New York City, we have the most well-funded school system in the nation. Each student, is about $24,000, $25,000 per pupil in the budget. I mean, the state budget for education is about $22 billion. So I really don't think it's a money issue. It's about how is the money being spent. And I think, I'm speaking to a lot of finance folks. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. How is the money being spent? And is it being spent in the right ways?
Exactly. I mean, there's something to be said about, having all these resources, but, there's a side of, where is the human element in, being creative, being innovative, being motivated to do the right thing, to try different approaches to learning and teaching, because
Yeah, and I think about it. It took a pandemic for the Department of Education to give students laptops. Why didn't they give the students laptops a year ago, before the pandemic. Why all of a sudden did the money get discovered to give students laptops and give them Wi-Fi? There are things that we should have been doing long ago. And I'm hoping that the pandemic, we learn from this.
Right, right. Yeah, it's unfortunate that sometimes you need this severe push, this, you know, almost this disaster, you know, to occur to wake up and realize, oh, things really need to change. So I'm glad you touched on that. That's an interesting perspective. I want to pivot a little bit to talking about you know, the comments you had around, you know, jobs, employment, and you know, small business, you know, in the city and in the Bronx. You've done some work there in securing grants for small businesses in the Bronx. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, we were able to get $200,000 for, this is pre-pandemic, for businesses on East Tremont, which is a commercial strip in the neighborhood, to help them improve their storefront facades, do some exterior work to make the businesses more inviting, things of that nature.
I see. And how can, you know, how can the city, you know, how can, you know, residents, you know, continue to, you know, support, I think, support small business. I mean, I think, you know, we've seen how the pandemic has really, you know, ravaged that part of the economy. And it's been really challenging for businesses to stay afloat, you know, in these times.
So I think we need federal relief. That's the first bar we need to reach. If we don't get federal relief, you know, New York State's facing a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit. New York City's facing a $5 billion deficit. And we can't deficit spend on the city and state level. The state can borrow, but state can't do deficit spending. So we need federal relief. And this isn't just in New York. Every state in the country needs federal relief. Until we get federal relief, the state and city's hands are kind of tied, which is unfortunate. You know, income tax revenue has gone up a little bit in the state, but property tax revenue, just to give people context, half of the tax revenue in New York City comes from property taxes. Because so many commercial spaces are vacant, the property tax assessment for commercial properties has gone down by about $2 billion. If that continues, we'll have less property tax revenue, which means we have less money to pay for social services, schools, and parks. That's the importance of why we need federal relief to fill in those budget holes. Because if that doesn't happen, the state and the city are going to have to cut, and we won't be able to give grants or loans to small businesses. It's imperative we get federal relief. And there's no doing anything without that.
I see. Now, you mentioned, you know, property taxes, you know, so I want to talk a little bit about, you know, real estate.
Yeah.
There's some work that you've done with the housing rights initiative. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, you've done your research. Yeah, so the Housing Rights Initiative, so it's a nonprofit that I'm on the board of. And what we do is we help investigate landlords that do a few things. You know, there's certain tax benefits that developers get for building housing, which is fine. But in exchange for these tax benefits, they're supposed to keep the apartments rent stabilized. So the rent can only go up so much. They're supposed to charge people the legal rent. What we've been finding is that certain landlords are, you know, they're destabilizing the units, taking them off of rent stabilization, or they're overcharging tenants for the rent. So what Housing Rights Initiative does is they sue these landlords. So people are charged their fair rent and they get rent relief for the overages that they've been paying. In fact, Housing Rights Initiative was on Netflix in Dirty Money season 2 for suing Jared Kushner, the former president's son-in-law, because his company was a tax cheat. And I want housing, but I want developers and landlords to follow the law. And no one should be overcharged for rent or abusing our tax break system and taking advantage of people in the city.
I think that's something we can all relate to, with rent and property taxes. That's something we all want to make sure everyone is paying their fair share, because I think rent is probably, it's one of the biggest expenses that we all have, and one of the most challenging things to sustain, but one of the most critical. We need these four walls and a roof over our heads, right?
Exactly.
So, thank you for the work that you've been doing with the Housing Rights Initiative. I think that's incredibly important. I've asked a lot of questions already. I could keep going on and on, but I do want to also invite the community. If you have questions that you want to ask, please feel free to ask John. He's an open book. Or if you don't want to ask directly, put it in the chat and we can ask on your behalf. I meant to mention that earlier. Does anybody have any questions? Else I can keep going on and on.
I'll go first. So thank you, John, for sharing your story. It's pretty inspiring because I still remember freshman year of college. This is more than 10 years ago. Talking to John and him telling me about his passion for government and politics, and then here we are now. He's running for an elected position. And I also totally forgot that you were also my real estate agent every year of college, but you just reminded me. So my question for you is, what is it about your platform that you think differentiates you from the other people you are running against?
Well, I think what differentiates it is that it's actually specific. So when I'm talking about housing, I'm talking about what specific land use rules need to be changed. Like, we need to legalize basement apartments that are usually fire hazards. Let's legalize them so people have safe homes. When we're talking about transportation, I'm saying, yes, we need busways, but I'm naming specific streets. I'm saying we need a busway on 3rd Avenue. We need to make the Grand Concourse car-free on Sundays. When I'm talking about improving maternal health, I'm saying I should invest capital dollars to create a birth center so women can give birth in a safe manner. When I'm talking about job creation, I'm naming specific nonprofits that the city should get funding towards. And I think that specificity shows that I've done my research, that I've spoken to the community, and that I'm not just using talking points and Twitter buzzwords. So I think people appreciate that because it comes from experience and having a track record. And I mean, we're leading in fundraising by a significant amount. And I haven't had to make too many calls for fundraising. Usually you think of politicians making calls left and right to raise money. The platform itself has driven the fundraising. It's resonating to have a pro-housing, pro-growth, pro-jobs message. And yes, I'm a Democrat, but I don't like titles like progressive or this. I just want my neighborhood to be better. And that's resonating with people, which is great.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions they want to bring up to John? Oh, I think we just
I have a quick question, John. Thank you for sharing. One thing I kind of want to, I guess, get your reflection on is, with all with COVID and all the vacancies that we currently see in New York, and your urge to kind of push the local growth of an economy, do you think New York would ever pass a vacancy tax to kind of address some of the issues that we're seeing with a lot of the, I guess, commercial owners of like buildings that are waiting out the storm and kind of restricting, I guess, mom and pop shops from coming in due to high rent? So what are your thoughts of that?
So a few things. So a commercial vacancy tax has been pushed a few places like Vancouver, San Francisco has I think they've implemented it or proposed it. A few issues with it. So sometimes people think, oh, the business owner is keeping it vacant for on purpose, especially in this environment. A lot of landlords are trying to hold on to tenants. If a place is vacant, it's really because the business just can't afford the rent. I think I'd probably lean more towards a vacancy tax for a vacant apartment where people need to live. But I think, part of being in real estate, part of being in business is taking risk. And here's another thing. And this is like a big issue, and hopefully the state and federal government can do this. A lot of times, a business owner may say, you know what, I want to give this small business a chance. I want to give them a deal on the rent. Their bank, as a term of the mortgage, won't allow them to give a business owner a discount on the rent. So a lot of times the landlord is prohibited from working with a smaller business because of the terms of their mortgage. So we need some reform on the bank side as well, because they underwrite mortgages based on an expected rent. And if they don't get that expected rent, they won't approve the lease. So it's not as simple as, okay, your space is vacant, let's tax you. It's a little more nuanced than that. And I'm very cautious of imposing a new tax in this environment when landlords are barely even covering their property taxes now. Real estate and taxes is really complicated in New York City.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. I see a couple came in from the chat, so I do want to bring that into the conversation. We have a comment from Miko who says, John, how are you managing your campaign financials to ensure they're keeping with the ideals you're running for? I.e., one critique of politics is that they rely on fundraising dollars to run campaigns and subject to their donors' interests over the communities. Transparency in financing campaigns. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, New York City is good. Not every city does this, but we have something called matching funds. So if someone from New York City gives $10, the city chips in $80, which is great. So it de-emphasizes the importance of fundraising. You can raise less money, but get public funds to help. But to the larger question, you have to fundraise to pay your staff. I pay my staff well. You need to pay staff. You need to pay for literature. You need to pay for mail. Until we get to the point where campaigns are 100% publicly funded, there's always going to be a need to fundraise. But that's when it comes to the integrity of the person running. I've had more than 600 donors to my campaign. I have not spoken to 600 people. And the reason why I'm running is to make my neighborhood better. And someone that donates $500 or $5,000, which has not happened because the spending limit is $500, I'm here to do the best for my neighborhood. And unlike a lot of elected officials, I feel that I'm employable outside of politics, and I'm going to do what's right for my neighborhood and what's right with my conscience. If I lose an election because I ignored donors, that's okay with me. I can live with that. I don't need to win by any means. I need to do what's right for my neighborhood. So I'll treat the donor the same way I treat the constituent that gave $1. As long as, and that's another thing. Sometimes donors are aligned with what your policies are, what their community is. So right now, real estate has given to my campaign. Real estate wants to build more housing. My community wants more housing. So it's up to me to bridge that gap to see how do we make it so it's affordable and things of that nature. But, quick explanation, you have to have a conscience and you have to have courage to be willing to lose an election if you have to.
Right. Doing the right thing above all.
Yeah.
I think we have time for just one more question because we're up against the hour. So comment from Mark. John, for your comments about vacancies, either from closures or folks working remotely, leaving the city, what do you think is the long-term impact on public transportation and property taxes, even if the oversight is split between the mayor versus the governor?
All right. So I've been reading some reports that say, I don't know who works in Midtown, but that commercial vacancies aren't expected to get back to pre-pandemic levels until 2024. And if that is the case, we are going to have a lot less revenue to work with. That means less people are going to take the train, which means there's going to be less funding for the MTA. It's a spiral. Less people go back to work, less people take the train, less money for the MTA. It's a cycle. Then they start cutting service, then they start raising fares. So I think we're going to need federal help for the next 2-3 years. we're also going to need this vaccination rollout to be a lot quicker so people can return to work and feel comfortable going back to work. But the fiscal outlook for the next 2-3 years is going to be rough. The stock market's doing pretty well, but a lot of people are still not working. And that's why we need the federal relief. It all hinges on how quickly can people get vaccinated. If 70% of the country is vaccinated by the end of the year, I think things will look a lot better in 2022 and 2023. If the vaccine rollout is slower, or if there are strains that are resistant to the vaccine, we're in a world of hurt. But to end on a high note, I think the new president that is listening to science and is not talking about disinfectant, I think we're in good shape, and I think we'll be in a good place by the end of the year.
Thank you, John. Thank you for those insights and your perspective there. We'd love to end things on a high note. And
yes,
I think all of us are looking ahead to 2021 being a year to push the reset button and to course correct a bit and to look at our futures in a new way. And I think we're seeing positivity in attitudes, not COVID cases, hopefully, and change that's moving this country and New York City in the right direction. So thank you so much for joining us this month. Community members, we put in the chat a link to John's website where you can read more about his platform, get in touch if you're interested in learning more about the community, and you're getting in touch with John as well. He put his email address, and he's more than willing to have a conversation or answer questions that you may have. So, thank you everyone for joining our first ever, My Million Year monthly speaker series. Again, we're going to be hosting these on a monthly basis. If you in the future have something to share or an idea for a topic, please reach us at mymillionyear@gmail.com or visit our website, www.mymillionyear.com. Next month, we're excited to bring you a look into a fintech startup bank called One Finance. Our guest speaker will be Andrew Stanko. He's actually on the line here right now. Hi, Andrew. So stay tuned for that. We'll be putting that together and getting an invite out there soon. So again, I can't thank everyone enough for joining this meeting. Javim, thank you for sharing your story of a career change during the pandemic. It's fantastic. Ed, thanks for sharing the tips on Rakuten. I'm sure folks who haven't already will sign up. And John, we're so thankful that you could join us to enlighten us about New York City, local government, and what it means to take a stand for the things you believe in and doing the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you again for the invitation. And hopefully when things get better, we can meet up in person.
Yes, absolutely. We look forward to that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Of your Saturday and your weekend. Stay safe and healthy.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.